Okay, we're live. So we're going to call this meeting to order. Just so you know, I am not the host now, Diane is, so I can't see your hands if you push the little hand symbol. So I'm going to ask you, if you wish to speak, all you do is say your name, and then I will acknowledge it and you can speak at that point. So that's just a procedural thing for today. So I think Mr. Leach is checking to see about Karen Cook because she hasn't joined us yet. So I'm going to ask if there's any disclosure, pecuniary interests, or the general nature thereof. Hearing none, I'm going to call on Ramona to walk us through the budget presentation.
One moment, Madam Mayor, we'll have a motion to go into Committee of the Whole.
Sorry. Diane has a motion to go into Committee of the Whole.
The motion reads, Madam Mayor, moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Rowe, the Council proceed into Committee of the Whole at 1:36 p.m.
Okay, so time
The vote.
for...
Sorry, Ramona, we'll just call
Sorry.
the vote. Yep, okay. Councillor Cook is absent. Councillor Kravitz.
Yes.
Councillor Fair.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Marks. Deputy Mayor Marks. Okay. Councillor Roberts.
Yes.
Councillor Rowe.
Yes.
And Mayor Martin.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Tom, for some reason it says you're not muted, but you're not coming through with any sound. We'll see if Ollie can fix that. Okay. Just listening, Ramona, you can begin your presentation. I assume, Tom, can you hear? Wave at me if you can hear what we're saying. Okay, Tom can hear, he just can't speak. So go ahead, Ramona, and make your, oh, there I heard him. There, Tom's coming through now. Okay. All right, Ramona, go ahead and make your presentation, please.
All right, welcome everyone. As you could see from the documents you got, we had a number of changes to the budget. We're trying to change it to a service-based budget. We're trying to make all the Excel documents flow into one document and do a number of other things with our budget to just make it a little bit smaller than it was before and a little bit more focused. So along the way, when you make that many changes, of course, you're going to miss some things and we'll have mistakes and growing pains along the way. And you'll see through this presentation that we will have a few of those. So we'll point those out as we go. I am going to assume that all of council has had a chance to read the budget commentary. And throughout the document, a negative number in red is a credit balance, usually income. Black numbers are expenses. You'll see that we have a table of contents. You can just go control, click, and that will take you to the section that you want to talk about. So overall, for the corporate overview, we've experienced a great deal of change in 2020 with more to come. We've rebalanced workloads. We've got some new areas of responsibility. We're looking at some technology transformation and modernization initiatives. We are also looking to make future decisions based on levels of service as our asset management plan becomes more mature. And the budget was prepared this year as a collaborative effort between functional operations managers and directors throughout the organization. So anytime that you have a lot of collaboration, it takes a lot more time. And I think every single department knows what's in their budget, can understand the numbers and knows where they're going with the budget. So the driving force in this budget is the responsible maintenance of existing infrastructure and services within the confines of the municipality's fiscal reality and meeting the demands of a growing population and the demands of increasing provincial regulation, particularly in the asset management part of it. So one of the things that I just want to point out is perspective. So it's important to keep that in mind because our total property taxes are less than a single line item for non-medical supplies for St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital in 2016. So when you take a look at all the kinds of taxes that people pay, municipal taxes are the only bill that they get as an actual invoice, and really overall they're a much lower burden than taxes that are charged by at-source deductions like HST and income tax. They're a much smaller percentage. But we do try and pay for a lot of services, and a lot of services that you see and feel and touch every day out of municipal taxes. So moving on to departmental areas of responsibility, we've got our corporate services area, and you can see the areas of service that covers. There's a number of highlights, operating highlights, and John, I don't know if you want to speak to those operating highlights at this moment.
Thank you, Ramona. Just essentially the operating highlights. The big things that the council is aware we accomplished, but more as a reminder, we completed the strategic plan last year with the assistance of the facilitation of Bill Weingard. Had a couple of facilitated workshops with Bill. We started the ward boundary review, and last year we took it as far as the open house that was held at New Sarum School in November. We started the work on the heritage conservation study, the updating of the previous report, and we had the task force for affordable housing that culminated in a report that came
has joined the meeting.
Came to council just in January of this year, and the secondary plan has been ongoing, and we had the public presentation in January of this year. And then as far as the key initiatives, COVID-19 has played a fair bit of a problem in the timing for a number of these, but through the strategic plan, we're looking to move forward with the official plan review. Watson and Associates are doing the population projections for 20-year time frame, and we are looking to bring forward to council shortly a proposal from Dylan to engage the community on the official plan, and engagement methods are going to depend on whether we're dealing with the normal traditional engagement methods plus supplemented by newer methods, or we're going to be looking entirely at new methods because of COVID. We'd like to get the secondary plan completed by year end. We're involved in the step with Peter Zuzek's firm to do the hazard analysis on that particular aspect. And we're looking to get some direction for council for final decisions regarding the Heritage Conservation District. That's really been on hold since about February, but subject to members being available digitally, there's no reason why we couldn't at least get that study back on the rails. Discuss the affordable housing strategy in the context of whatever may happen to the housing market with COVID, and then complete the ward boundary review. With the ward boundary review, we've tentatively got a public meeting scheduled for September with the consultants, so hopefully that we'll be able to hold that date. And then finally, you will not see funding for a waterfront plan in the study. Originally, there may have been some dialogue around doing that, but with the COVID process, I don't necessarily believe we'll be ready to do so. But what I can see happening this year with council's approval is that we'd go through the RFP process and select a consultant to do that, so that process could be going forward next year with budgetary approval and the consent of council. If there's any questions about the overview, but otherwise that's how I see last year and what we hope to accomplish this year.
I'd just like to welcome and acknowledge that Karen has joined us via phone. So Karen, if at any time you want to speak, what you have to do is just state your name and I will acknowledge it, because I'm not the host, so I can't see hands anyway. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Ramona.
And so our next section is asset management and development. This is a new service area for us. And Lloyd, would you like to say a few words on asset management and development?
With respect to asset management and development services, so this is really formalizing some of the things that we've already done previously, brought them under the umbrella of one department. With respect to development services, we're taking more of a hands-on approach with inspection of new development and ensuring that the donated assets that the municipality is receiving are constructed in a good quality workmanship manner, and that they meet our specifications. Since going forward, after they're constructed, the municipality will be assuming the responsibility for those assets and future maintenance and replacement of them. So it's imperative that we make sure that we get a good quality product donated to us after the development's done. With respect to asset management, the province, as you're aware, have been ramping up pressures on municipalities to have asset management plans, more detailed asset management plans when municipal assets are maintained, with the intent on the level of service that those assets provide to residents do not diminish, and that we continue to maintain and invest in those assets. So that's more of a proactive approach that the province is requiring all municipalities to undertake. We've been fairly strategic on a asset class by asset class basis over the last, I'm going to say 18 years. But now the province is requiring us to look on more of a holistic approach and looking at risk to failure and what that might mean to providing a level of service to our residents. So going forward, councils in Ontario will be required to look at prioritizing those replacements across the municipal wide level. So, for example, something that might be popular to construct or build may take less of a precedence over maintaining what's already in place, and to ensure that the level of service to residents is there for them, and that there's no safety concerns.
Okay, and of course, there's an update that everyone can read online here for our update in terms of exactly what's gone on in that particular department and where they're looking at going in 2020. The next department is finance. So I'll speak to this a little bit. We're taking a look at doing a technology transformation program in terms of modernizing processes and software systems. And that's going to take several years and several projects to improve the organization's business processes and operational efficiencies. We have implemented this year robotic process automation within our accounts payable process using Laserfiche. We had the benefit of some very good IT team people who were able to help us implement that. And what it does for us is it lets each department see what they're spending money on. It is improving our workflows, enhancing our internal controls, and it's got some pretty robust approval routing. So there's also some significant items that were completed in IT over the last year. They replaced the Microsoft Exchange server. We've been upgrading computer and laptop operating systems to Windows 10. And of course, again, the accounts payable workflows, they were instrumental in allowing that to happen. And for 2020, our key initiatives are really involving integration opportunities with software. We're always looking at that, data cleanup, process rationalization, and just automating some paper-based processes, enhancing internal controls, eliminating data gaps. And we're looking at also getting more things online where we can. We're hoping to be able to achieve that in 2020. And of course, the projects that we work on cross all operational areas. We may take a look at the chart of accounts to facilitate improved management and reporting, and take a look at implementing some asset management tools in conjunction with our new focus on asset management, or ongoing focus and renewed commitment to asset management. Fire and rescue services have implemented Voyant alerts. So if you haven't signed up for that, you should, so that you get alerts related to where you live. And corporate services has implemented a community engagement tool called Bang the Table. And we've titled our website relating to that. We've titled it Let's Talk CentralElgin.ca, and that's where you can go to follow all the updates on major projects that are underway within the municipality. Fire and rescue services is the next service area to talk about, next departmental area, and I will turn that over to Chris to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Not sure if I'm muffled here or not. Good. Okay.
I'm fine.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Just the highlights of 2019, we did do an annual report at the beginning of the year. It did speak to a lot of the projects that we've done, but I just highlighted a couple things here. So the fire station obviously is a big part for us. It's still going forward, we hope. The tender should close in the next couple weeks. We do have a net zero building that we are putting up. We've been working closely with our designers as well and engineers, and it seems to be coming along well. Hired 14 new recruits. Training's been completed for them. Along with that, we designed and built a new training facility. And we've also purchased a used aerial that we've found in the US that will be housed in the new fire station when it's up. We also received delivery of a new pump for Yarmouth Center. So going forward, again, we're going to award the tender for the fire station, as I said, the next couple of weeks. We continue to monitor provincial orders pertaining to COVID with the emergency group. We've done a collective decision making on a lot of orders that have come from the province. It's been good that we've done it as a group. I think it's been very successful. It's just as hard as when they lift the orders. It's difficult to make the decisions as it was when they came in. So we've done a great job, I think, with that. It's taken a lot of patience. I thank everybody out in Central Elgin, including the fire ban. I know there's a lot of people that were upset about that, but that was part of the distancing that we wanted to make sure that everybody was safe. Next step for me is probably going to try and figure out for future years virtual training initiatives for our firefighters. We found in the last couple of months that it's been very difficult for our firefighters to keep up on some items, although there've been a lot of medical calls, but we feel that this is something that maybe we should look at moving forward for next year. So that pretty much sums up what we've been up to for the fire service, and we look forward to the next 7 months hopefully being a lot more relaxed for everybody. And oh yes, our beach rescue will be training hopefully for the summer months to come ahead. So if you do see any of our beach rescue people out there, that is what they'll be doing is the training. So not to think that anybody's on the beach yet, but that's going to be coming in the next couple months, we think. Ramona.
Thank you, Chris. Moving along now to infrastructure and community services. This is a fairly large portfolio. It covers arenas, beach maintenance, harbor, municipal drains, parks, recreation, roads, solid waste, water, and wastewater. We're not considering water and wastewater budgets today. We are focusing on our tax-based budgets. And so with that introduction, Jeff, would you like to speak a little bit to that area?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll run through some of our 2019 operating highlights here. So the Infrastructure and Community Services Department has undergone a restructuring in 2019. As Lloyd had mentioned earlier, the asset management and the development administration has moved over to a new department. So the former Physical Services Department, which is now Infrastructure and Community Services, has retained the majority of its core operations, however. In May of 2019, the municipality's contract with its solid waste contractor, Mterra, had expired. At the time, council decided to move forward with bringing solid waste collection in-house. And as of June 1st, we have been providing that service in-house. So 2 side load trucks were purchased, and we are renting 1 rear load truck on a monthly basis. We've also brought in 5 additional unionized staff to provide the service. Also in January of 2019, water billing was brought back into the Physical Services Department from the Finance Department. So that has kept our new water billing coordinator very busy over the last year. On top of that, we brought in 900 additional customers that were previously billed through the city of St. Thomas and Integris back to Central Elgin. So that's created some additional work as well. And those additional 900 were from the St. Thomas suburban area, being Lyndhurst and Eastwood. So some of the other highlights in 2019 were the lighting installed along the East and West Harbor walkways in Port Stanley. Phase 2 of the old Lyndhurst project was completed, and that was a portion of Crescent Avenue. The state of the infrastructure report and asset management plan for roads was completed by 4 Roads Management, and that provided recommended funding levels for things such as gravel resurfacing and hot mix paving, surface treatment, etc. George Street in Port Stanley was reconstructed to a new urban profile in cooperation with the Kokomo development. We got 2 municipal class environmental assessments underway, one for the stabilization and reconstruction of Front Street in Port Stanley, and the other being the sanitary servicing of Union. And we would expect both of those environmental assessments to be completed in 2020. We installed a new water main on Dalewood to service the Dalewood campground, and Weberborn was reconstructed from Dalewood to Highbury Ave. 2020 key initiatives. 2020 has been a particularly challenging year, or beginning to the year, in dealing with the COVID-19. There has been construction projects delayed, the arenas were forced to close early, and there's been a lot of uncertainty with parks and beaches, etc. So that's made basic operations a little more challenging. We've got currently operators riding around in separate trucks, and it's just, with the social distancing, it's hard to keep up the same level of efficiency as before. So for 2020, some of the key projects, I won't go through the whole list here. We've got quite a few, but I'll touch on some of the highlights. The Southdale Line Bridge is in need of rehabilitation. Some of the structural members are in need of replacement there. So if this work isn't completed in 2020, further load restrictions would be placed on the bridge, and that would require emergency services to take detours around the bridge. In keeping with that same bridge, the creek running under the bridge needs to be realigned there. The creek is threatening the west bridge abutment there as well. Southdale Line reconstruction, that is west of Sunset. That is being done to a new urban cross section. We are also servicing that with water main and sanitary sewer, which will also support development. Reconstruction of Hill and High Streets to an urban cross section, as well as sanitary servicing to Hill, High, and Larry Streets. We're building a new skate park in Turvey Park. we're proposing some new crosswalks. So 4 would be in Port Stanley. 3 are in cooperation with the county along Carlow, Warren, and Colburn streets. We're also suggesting a 4th one in Port Stanley to be funded by the municipality of Central Elgin, and that's to be placed somewhere between on Bridge Street between William and Carlow. There's no stop condition there, and with the pedestrian and traffic counts there, we believe one is warranted. Trunk sanitary sewer to be extended on Sunset Road to East Road, which will service the fire station as well as a union area in the future. New soccer field in Donyak Park. New sidewalk on the north side of Elm Street between Elmwood and Centennial. That project is being administered by the City of St. Thomas, but the sidewalk will be funded by the Central Elgin. And resurfacing program, that's hot mix asphalt and surface treatment. And we are recommending the $1.15 million as per the recommended funding levels in the State of the Infrastructure and Asset Management Roads report that I had mentioned earlier. New replacement of the ice resurfacer at the Belmont Arena. And a couple of other operational things. A new 4-year collective agreement was reached with the QP members and the municipality earlier in the spring before the whole COVID thing hit. And as well, we moved the solid waste collection schedule from a 5-day to a 4-day weekly rotation, Tuesday to Friday, to reduce the number of interruptions to service due to holidays. So that is it for 2020.
Okay. Did you want to speak at all, Jeff, to the notable omissions from the 2020 budget?
Sure. So let me just bring that back up here. So there are a couple projects that we are omitting in 2020. I'll start with the Lyndhurst Phase 3. The project is currently designed and tender ready. The environmental compliance approval has not been granted yet. We're expecting to get that sometime early in July. That being said, we have some other priorities this year, one being the Southdale Line Bridge. If we don't move forward with the Southdale Line Bridge, we're going to have a reduction in service on that bridge, in reducing the load limits on that bridge. If we leave Lyndhurst Phase 3, the remainder of Crescent Ave, for one more year, we're not going to experience a reduction in the level of service for Crescent Avenue. Further to that, due to COVID-19, a number of contractors were shut down for, I'm going to say roughly 6 weeks, and are already behind schedule on their committed projects. Further, being it's mid-May now, the earliest we would have a contractor in place if we were to tender for a 4-week period would be the end of June. Last year we tendered late in the year and we didn't get great pricing, and we decided to hold over Southdale Line until 2020. So for those reasons, I'm recommending that we delay Lyndhurst Phase 3 for 1 year until 2021. Eastwood Park is the next one. With that one, a concept plan has been developed for the park in consultation with local residents. I'm recommending that this project be delayed, and I've got it shown here in 2023 in the 5-year capital plan. The reason it's delayed so far out is for other priorities, such as this year we have the Southdale Line Bridge. 2021 we have shown doing Lyndhurst Phase 3. 2022 is going to be the Front Street reconstruction, which is going to be which will likely eat up the majority of the capital funds in 2022. Therefore, there's not a whole lot of leeway until 2023, and we should be able to fund that whole park in 2023 is my hope. So the other project I have down here is the water meter replacements. We were hoping to have a look at replacing the water meters in 2020. However, due to COVID-19, that really complicates the installation. Staff and or the contractors would have to enter residences, and right now I think the operation would just be too difficult. So this is something that we may approach council with in 2021 with the water and wastewater budget to install these water meter replacements. So those are the emissions for 2020.
Bill Fair, could I speak? I found this really disturbing. It seems to continue on with the history of Ward 4 being eliminated or ignored in just about every project for many, many years. Ward 4 seems to be the financial breadbasket for Central Elgin, yet ours are the projects that are first cut or ignored or willfully procrastinated on, because I have asked about this project since last September. I just find it extremely irritating that Ward 4 pays the bills, and one of our biggest handicaps in my mind is being a part of Central Elgin. We pay the bills, we get very poor, limited, or ignored services. I want to make sure that that's on record.
I'd suggest council take a look at the previous capital budgets over the last 5 or 6 years, because the majority of tax-supported capital projects have been in Ward 4 in terms of Turvey Park, the Eastwood subdivision area, and with Crescent Avenue. So the majority of capital funds for tax-supported capital projects have been actually spent in Ward 4.
Other questions or comments from people? Go ahead, Tom.
Madam Mayor. Quoted Mr. Councillor Fair's comments and being very supportive of that. I piped up and said, believe me, I'll be there to support it. Times have changed. Certainly I have a lot of friends in Ward 4 as well. I represented it for 2 terms. But in fairness, I think Jeff has done a fabulous job here. I'm actually quite impressed by the whole budget. It's certainly approach from all senior staff, and I'm very pleased. If I thought was being slighted, I'd be right there battling with you, Councillor Fair. But in fairness, there's logical reasons. No one's getting stuck driving down Crescent Ave. Certainly everyone would like some improvements. I've been waiting on my road for improvements for a lot of years. That's the way it goes. But no, if you live down on Southdale Line and that bridge is going to be closed or reduced and you could not get a fire truck or an ambulance across it, that's a safety concern. So I certainly support where staff are putting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I will say that I received this morning 4 calls from ratepayers in the Lyndhurst Crescent area, very concerned because somehow they had heard that we weren't going to be doing it this year, and they were quite upset about the fact that they were being put off. One of the complaints was that the final layer of paving obviously can't be done until the whole street is done. And a lot of them are getting concerned with that. So I'm just letting you know that. The other thing with the Southdale Line Bridge, just a comment I would have, I know Jamestown Line Bridge was closed for over a year because of safety concerns, especially when they closed the Port Bruce Bridge and fear that a lot of people would be going down that road. So obviously there was no way that our safety equipment, our rescue, et cetera, could get down there. And we do have some people beyond that. But anyway, are there other comments from anyone else concerning this one? Head, Ramona.
All right, we will move along to the next section then. So we've got some overall, where are we here? Overall budget planning considerations. So one of those overall budget planning considerations is our committed funds that we've committed in previous years, either prior budgets or prior council resolution. For the most part, these items are either underway, we've already tendered, they just haven't been finished. And then, so we've got our approved amounts that we have remaining. And then we met with senior management and said, okay, well, what's still required for carry forward? And we came up with these amounts that were still required for carry forward based on the recommendations of the engineers and the people responsible for the projects. And then we said, okay, how much of that is still going to be used in 2020? And let's pull that through our reserves. Now, there will be a bit of a change here because Dennis Kravitz was polite enough to catch a typo with this 112 to 212. So that will be corrected in a future version coming forward to council. That's $100,000 difference, which in the grand scheme of things, you will see based on our reserves is not going to make a difference in decisions that you make. When we pull those numbers forward into our reserve balance continuity, we've attached each one of those commitments to the reserve that would fund it. And we have an ending balance after all those commitments. We have what we've estimated to be going on in our budget of 2020, what we've estimated to be funded from each of those reserve funds. And then we have our projected balances after our commitments. So one of the things you can see here is that we're looking to pull a little bit more than what we have in our outdoor recreation DCs to fund Turvey Park. Most of the rest end up in a credit balance, which means they have money in the fund. We've purchased very recently and still have one more large truck to purchase out of fire vehicle and equipment, but over the course of a few, that fund will easily be replenished based on our equipment funding program. And a similar thing is happening for roads, vehicle and equipment, and we'll have a bit of a switch there, and you'll see that in a moment. That was one of our learning opportunities that we had over the course of this new budget. So overall, we're looking at the end of 2019, a balance in our reserves of about 12 million. We have about 3 million of that already committed in projects that council has already approved or projects that are already underway, leaving us a balance of 8.6 million, another approximately 1 million to be used in 2020, leaving us a balance of 7.6 million in our reserve funds. When we go through and analyze these funds in our Excel sheet, which council has, but which is not in this printed budget, you'll see that a lot of those reserves are restricted. So we have used quite a bit of our reserves to fund major projects that we have constructed over the last couple of years. That's drawn down our reserve balances. We are not in the position to continue to be able to draw down those reserves until they are funded. And for a lot of those reserves, that will be until they are funded with our development charges. So we need houses to be built to help pay down some of the projects we've already done before we can go ahead and add new capital projects. Now, debt capacity is another consideration as we go through our budget.
Ramona,
So,
could I
yes,
ask you
sorry,
a
were there
couple of questions? Just back on the overall budget planning considerations, the 2 pages back, on page 14.
right?
On things being moved forward here, I just was surprised that the West Edith Cavell parking was still in there because I thought we decided we weren't doing it, but it's still being carried forward, the 75,000.
Where are we?
Second last line.
Oh, and we had a 0 to be used in 2020. So I think at the point where we first created this sheet, the 75,000 that hadn't been taken off the table yet.
Okay, the other one that I was curious about was the old Lyndhurst Phase 1 and old Lyndhurst Phase 2. Old Lyndhurst Phase 1, everything's been spent, but there's a small amount being carried forward for Phase 2. I just wondered what that was.
I believe that is to finish off some ending costs that we may still carry forward into 2020. Jeff, I don't know if you can confirm that.
Yeah, that's to cover off things such as the engineer completing as constructed drawings, looking after deficiencies from last year, any other concerns that could arise that may have some expense attached to it.
Okay, just a couple more while we're on that page. The Belmont soccer field relocation, we've got 40,000 pre-approved carry forward. I know that the Agrimart there, we're going to be paying for the new soccer fields. I'm just wondering what the 40,000 is for.
So that's the amount over and above what the agreement was for. So that's something where I couldn't really put a number on the improved amount remaining, just the way the contract was worded in the agreement that the municipality entered into didn't really have an amount attached there. It did have an amount attached where the other party was going to fund up to a maximum amount. Jeff considered what the total cost of relocating the soccer fields were, and the difference required from the municipality is estimated to be 40,000.
Okay, and just one final one, then that is the Sparta line reconstruction, the $150. I'm not certain. I know the lighting, we had approved the lighting at the 185 below that, but I wasn't certain what the reconstruction 150 was.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I believe in the 2019 budget, there was 150,000 in there to do Central Elgin's portion of Sparta line east of Quaker. So all that would include the widening, the curbs, sidewalks, etc.
Thank you. I do remember that now. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Does anyone else have a question before we move on?
Bill Fair, just a question on the page 15 that we just went by.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, I noticed there's over 7 million there, and I see that our operating capital is in there. Is that on that total package, are all those funds mixed together and operating is run out of it and the various other ones are run out of it? So that is where our cash flow is actually all included in one big block of reserve funds, other than I know that the harbor one has to be taken out and segregated, but are the rest just in one block?
So there are a number of funds that are separate, and then there's where our net operating kind of falls into at the end of every year. So our net operating essentially falls into this rate stabilization reserve. I know we've pulled out a bit and separated it and called it working capital reserve as well, which is a prudent thing to do to kind of keep them a little bit separate. But essentially our closeout at the end of the year will fall into this rate stabilization reserve.
All right, so that does mean that we are using a lot of those funds to for our cash flow. If we ended up spending more, that those reserves could be moving between the different ones up and down during the year.
Yes, and they will adjust slightly. Our 2019 books aren't finally closed yet. We haven't done any of our tangible capital asset adjustments, and there may be a few other adjustments as the auditors go through that we've missed doing. So as those 2019 books get closed out, this number will adjust a little bit. and then all these numbers will flow from there. I'm just going to take this opportunity to just flip over to the Excel sheet that produced this information, because while we have it fresh in our minds, here's the error that was pointed out to me earlier by Dennis. So I just want to correct that. Okay, and then I am going to get rid of the highlight because we've corrected that. I'm going to correct this number by deleting it. And I believe those were all the changes to the numbers on that particular sheet. And then when I switch over to the reserves, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. And you will see on our Excel that these reserves, we've got a column that's not on the printed document, but that council can see on their Excel documents, based on which are restricted funds and which are non-restricted funds or purpose-based funds. And so if you filter on, and I've got a filter here right now, and that filter has been just to exclude trust funds and to exclude non-tax-based related funds. So then if I take that and I say, what are our discretionary funds that we have to work with, you'll see that that number becomes $4.5 million.
Okay, that makes more somewhat more sense. Thank you.
Ramona, it's Dennis here.
Yes.
The last adjustment you made, I don't believe you changed it in the final column on that last sheet you were on. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm glad. That's why we have everybody looking at these pages. So every set of eyes will help. Make sure that we're all on the same page at the end of the day. So
Ramona?
now, yes?
It's Colleen. I just wanted to ask one other question on page 14. So when we are looking at the old Lyndhurst phase 1 and phase 2 commitment dollars, there's about 1.7 million there, of which $10,000 is going to be used in 2020. And I suspect the $15,000 balance will be used in 2021. Does that really mean that there's over $1.5 million of phase 1 and 2 left that's able to be applied to phase 3, so that the dollars are going to be there when we get there next year?
So that is a question really of philosophy and how we would approach it. I guess if we wanted to be really aggressive, we could say, oh yes, this is already approved and we can pull that toward phase 3. But really that's probably not the best way to approach it. I would suggest that we say phase 1 is done. Between the two phases, we had enough to do the work that we've already done. And then we, because we haven't raised funds, some of these were to be pulled out of the reserve, and really all the money at the end of the year gets put back in to or taken out of that rate stabilization reserve, then we would make those decisions going forward.
Okay, so that makes sense. So the 1.5 would end up in this exercise for 2021's budget. That those two line items would be zero, and the rate stabilization fund would be increased by that total.
That's it would close out. It wouldn't really be increased because it hadn't been taken out yet. Right. We're just saying what's still committed out of all these funds, what remains committed. So those are the funds still to be taken out of that particular rate stabilization fund. So we're not going to add back stuff that hasn't come out.
True. Okay. Yes. Yes.
So Bill Fair?
Yeah.
So the chances are pretty good that it could easily be deferred another year if things don't pan out the way we're projecting this year.
I guess that's possible. I would say that based on the amount of money just in the first 3 phases, I believe it's 7 million, which is 50% of our tax rate in total, is it not? Is that right, Jeff? About 7 million with the first 3 phases?
Yeah, I would say roughly.
Yeah, so that's 50% of our tax base for one street.
Questions on this? If not, we'll let Ramona go on.
Okay. So we're through the reserves and the commitments, debt capacity impact. So this is our debt capacity from issued debt that we already have. And you can see that most of it's related to sewer and water. There's a road share of some that runs out in 2025. Our debt capacity opens up quite significantly in 2026. Overall, if we are going to issue debt for our Port Stanley Fire Station, which is what we're planning to do based on the, I'm going to say in quotes, the grant funding, which is really a low interest loan. If we do move forward with that from FCM, then that would add to our debt, but we do have room for that. We can repay up to 1.2 million each and every year. And so that limit is whatever amount that we can borrow with whatever combination of amount, term, and interest rate that's under 1.2 million in annual repayments. And that's our availability to issue more debt. So for example, that would be $15 million of debt for a 20-year term at a 5% interest rate. Our Port Stanley Fire Station is estimated to end up around 4 million. And if COVID-19 really affects our cash flow, we can go back and we can finance the 1 million in garbage trucks that we've already purchased. I doubt that we'll need to do that, but I just put that out there in case, if we get really tight, then those are some options that we have. Any questions on the debt side of things? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. So one of the things to always keep in mind is our assessment. So we've been very fortunate to benefit from steady annual assessment growth over the past 5 years. And the growth has really been used to offset the inflationary pressures for operating costs. And you'll see that again this year. We have a substantial base of farmland assessment. And so there's a farmland assessment practice in Ontario where farmland is, the burden of those taxes is essentially shifted to the other groups because farmland is taxed at 25% and now in central Elgin County, 23%. And so that has the effect of shifting the tax burden to other classes. So weighted assessment for farm taxes is a tool that's used to recognize the excessive burden of property tax on a capital intensive sector like agriculture. But and that's as compared to the demands that the sector places on municipal services. The province partially compensates us through that disparity for through their ONF grant calculations. But another calculation within the ONF grant parameters is ability to pay for the population within your municipality. So what that means is that provincial grants are lower for ONF grants where the population is considered to be able to afford property tax. So there is a bit of an income tax or income affordability component that comes into our ONF grant calculations. And here you can see the difference between farmland assessment before you do the weighted assessment and afterward. And then you can see a very similar type of comparison with your assessment distribution before the weighted assessment and the assessment distribution afterward. So that's a little bit about how assessment works within the province of Ontario, and note differently in Central Elgin, but it does become important because Central Elgin has quite a large farmland tax base. You can see 25% just about in base assessment, and then after it's all weighted, the tax burden becomes 6% on farmland assessment. Any questions on that? Okay. So now we get to financial planning and our 5-year capital plan. So there's number of things that we have going on. There's always operational pressures. Everybody knows hydro costs go up. Our police costs go up by probably about 1% of our tax rate this year. Insurance keeps going up. There are salary and wage costs that go up a little bit every year. And also what we're going to be doing with making our asset management plan more mature is we're going to be adding all those items like condition, risk, useful life, and replacement costs for the assets, so that that information can be captured to inform future annual capital budgets and long-range planning. What we have right now is a capital budget that's derived from the operational knowledge of the hands-on functional managers and directors. So here's a summary of the capital budget for each of the next 5 years, and that's in summary and in detail. So here's the summary, and you can see that it's spread pretty much evenly. We've got just under 25 million over 5 years, and it's spread pretty much evenly over those 5 years in terms of where the burden lies. And if we go down a little bit to the next page, you can see each of those individual items and what makes up that summary. So I don't know how legible this is on the screen because it is quite small. I'm not sure if it's more legible with the printed documents that council received. I guess you can give me some feedback on that.
I can read it, but that's on both.
I'm reading it fine. I'm using a big monitor in the office so that I didn't have that problem.
I'm using my printed document, which is a lot easier to read.
Okay, so there's, so are there any questions on that 5-year capital plan?
One question for me, the down under equipment in roads, it has a 2013 Ford F550 crew cab to be replaced at 120,000. That was what it was, the price that surprised me. Is that one vehicle?
I'm not sure. Jeff, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. Sorry, it's the Ford.
It's the, yeah, 2013 Ford F550 crew cab.
Okay.
It's 120,000.
Yeah, that's I believe that's is that a 5-ton truck or a 3-ton truck with that includes the box on the back, and I think that's where the additional cost is coming from.
Jeff, I believe that's a water truck that has the utility box and a crane that's on the truck to service hydrants and submersible pumps and pumping stations.
Thank you. That really helps. There was just one other one there, and that was the Dodge Charger, which is up under fire, and Chris could answer this. I was just surprised at the price at that at $58,400. That's a lot more than my electric car. So I was just curious.
That was just a rough estimate, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure it will be that much. I mean, it's a couple of years out. I think probably it'd be closer to just under 50,000 likely. And the last one was 44. So that was with all the equipment on it as well, right?
Thank you.
High cost of red paint.
Bill
It's
Fair.
Colleen.
Oh.
And then
Okay,
Bill?
I was just going to say, I've only been at this a short time, but I don't think that I've ever seen such an extensive 5-year budget, I guess, capital budget year. So if we have this and everyone is aware and we can lay it out and continue to use it, I think there should be no issue that we should be able to do Lyndhurst and everything else that's higher dollar value if we stick to this plan.
Bill?
Okay, I was going to say similar to what Colleen said. It shows that it's supposed to happen, and I hope it really does. I just I see it in the projection, and as Colleen said, in the past we've had projection out. Like I know Lawton was projected out a year ago in the budget, and this at least gives sort of some not carved in stone, but it does give a much better picture, and so it does look at workability. And as far as the earlier comment that it was $7 million, which is 50% of our annual budget, it's not 50% of the annual budget in any year. It's much less in total over roughly 6 years now. It's been that it's spread out, so it looks as if it hopefully will happen.
Any other comments or questions?
Madam
Not-
Mayor,
Yes, Tom?
to be clear, Crescent Ave to be done as soon as possible. But I think the handicap today, and I think the public will understand the uncertainty COVID-19 has brought us. I'd be very leery of putting tenders out. If this pandemic goes sideways, the contractors, they've got to be very cautious. They don't even know if they can fulfill the contracts, all kinds of difficulties. So that's where I'm being cautious, putting, the bridge first. But certainly I'm very much in favor of getting this done as possible. But I'm quite impressed by this budget.
Any other comments or questions? If not, go ahead, Ramona.
Okay, thanks for those kind comments, Tom. But that being said, we're learning as we go. And one of the things that we learned about is that we didn't have a similar schedule for the 2020 capital plan. So council has this in the Excel file that accompanied the printed budget, but what I didn't do was pull out a similar schedule for the 2020 capital plan. So let's take a look at that now. I'm just going to make this screen a little bit bigger. And when we put forward our next copy of the, our next iteration of the printed document, this will become a schedule within that document. So you can see for the 2020 capital budget, there are a number of things in this budget that that are now neatly summarized for you that weren't summarized so nicely before. So we've got our IT equipment that we've got some upgrading to do. We've got a few items at the Belmont Arena, some items at the Port Stanley Arena, some fire equipment that is scheduled for replacement. There's the Union Fire Station overhead door upgrade. There are some items now. When we get to transfers, some of these transfer accounts, I didn't necessarily use an income account and it fell into an expense account. So there's a little bit more refining that we need to do there. But essentially we've got our 200,000 of waterfront concept plans funded by the harbor funds. The same as with the breakwater, that's just not showing in this particular item. In fact, most of the equipment replacement is all funded by equipment reserves, and so we've saved up for that already. You'll see the Catfish Creek realignment is in here. The Southdale Line Bridge rehab is one of our larger numbers that's in here, as well as our hardtop roads resurfacing amounts. So Now that this is in one nice neat schedule, I don't know if there's any questions on this particular schedule that will be added into your next iteration.
No questions, go ahead.
Okay. So that brings us back to our capital by budget area. Now, this is where we start to have a little bit of fun. 2020 proposed tax funded budget summary was, we've got here a 2% levy increase. And in going through and taking a break, all of senior management had the chance to think about it over the weekend and said, okay, what's going on here? Is there anything that we can do to get this closer to zero, which was really what our goal was. And in our main data sheet, what we realized is that we have budgeted for our equipment charges, but part of those equipment charges that we use to fund our roads replacement equipment reserve every year normally gets reduced by the amount of maintenance that we've done on the equipment that year. So there was a $500,000 difference that we were over funding for. So that gets us some good news. That gets us to a new chart for our tax funded budget that now looks like this. So instead of a plus 2%, once we made that adjustment, we are sitting at minus 1.4% overall. So that is in our levy increase. Just make that a little bit smaller and see if I can fit the whole thing on one page. Okay, so you can see here from our 2019 tax supported budget, our assessment growth gave us a lift of about 666,000, which would give us a base tax supported budget for 2020 of 14,701, which means every 1% increase in the tax levy would be $147,000. When we made the adjustment for our double counting of equipment charges there, we're now at a levy increase of minus 1.4%. So then I want to take us to, what does that mean? That means when we go to our assessment changes, when you start to spread that levy increase over all of our weighted assessment, then we end up with a net tax rate increase of close to zero. It's 0.44%. And what does that mean? That means when we go to our rates that we levy on everybody who lives in Central Elgin, we are looking then at that proposed tax rate. And when we blend it with all the tax rates, the rate goes down a little bit. Now, average assessment, though, has gone up. So when you take a look at the lower tier impact on the average single family home, you're looking at a tax change across the year of $43. And you've got that same type of adjustment throughout the various types of properties that we have, and you can see the projected tax change based on what's showing in that levy.
Bill Fair, could I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, this chart that you're on right now, I was trying to follow it across. If you go, say that, pick the single family home at the first line. Okay, it says that the current value assessment is an increase of 1.61%. And I was trying to find some sort of a correlation between that and the actual dollar change. Because if you look at the lower tier current value assessment taxes and the 2021, it works out to about a 1.05%. And I'm just wondering what the difference is between the 1.61 and the 1.05 that I get when it comes to real dollars.
Well, we'll have to go through some of those calculations offline there, Bill. It's fairly complex in terms of how the assessment rolls out, and Opta is a tool that we have as a municipality to run these rates and to say, okay, on an average home, what's the difference going to be? So I have used that Opta tool, and Opta has gone in and picked an average single family home for me and what the current value assessment change has been, and this is what they've told me is the average percentage. So there's approximately, I believe, 4,600 homes in all, 4,315 is the property count that they're averaging this over. And so I'm going to trust their numbers. They do this for all the municipalities across Ontario. And so I'm going to trust that this 1.61 is correct.
Okay, just to comment on that, what I was trying to get at is if you took the 264,750 average times and add 1.61, it works to 269. I'm just wondering, it doesn't work the same way between the 21-22-43 to the 21-66. That's what I was trying to see. Those two just don't seem to correlate at all with the 1.61.
Okay, so the 1.61% is your change in current value assessment. So that's between these two columns. And then what we have is our tax levy spread over all of the current value assessments weighted average. And we have that over here. So our tax rate calculation takes our total amount to be raised. And then up here, you can see how our assessments are all weighted. So this is the 2020 weighted assessment. And what we've done here is we said, okay, well, what's our 2020 weighted assessment at our 2019 tax rate? What does that give us? And that's this difference here. We say, okay, so 2020, that gives us this amount if we were to keep our tax rates exactly the same. But now that we're spreading them over a different weighted assessment value, we then get a tax rate that gives us a 0.44% increase.
Okay, I'm clear on that now. I understand that. I thought that they were too direct. The columns are all related, but I understand now. I'm fine now.
Okay, and you'll be getting this Excel document again once everything's updated from today. And then I will also go back into Opta based on any changes we might make today and make sure that these are updated. So when we go back to our tax funded budget, you'll see here that because of those equipment charges alone, we have a bit of a difference. And that's only going to affect the roads area. So because I've put that solely in the roads area under roads maintenance, I'm going to go back, nothing else has changed. I'm going to go back now to our published document. And the only item that will have changed here is this roads line. It will have gone down by 500,000. Does everybody follow, and are there any questions?
Fair, one other. Can I go ahead?
Bill?
Okay, I just, on asset management, I see it's got the 307,771 projected for 2020. I guess probably since we changed things around in 2019, probably there should be some sort of a number there because we did do asset management in 2019. So the question is any of that 307 that should have properly been allocated back to 2019?
So in 2020 is when we decided to make that its own department. And yes, ideally we could reallocate in 2019, but we didn't reallocate the wages related to that area back in 2019. That change occurred officially in September. And so for 2020 is when we started recording them in their own separate area.
Okay, I see, because I know that we did do asset management in 2019.
Yes, we did do asset management, and then we decided that it really required full attention for asset management and development for their own department. And Lloyd, I don't know if you want to speak further to that.
Yeah, actually, and through your Madam Mayor, to Councillor Fair, if you recall, Council also agreed to add 2 positions in 2019 in the asset management development services beyond what was the previous staffing complement to deal with the asset management, valuation of assets, as well as the development control.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I just thought that, you know, we started it then, but it's okay in this area. I just thought it would, you know, we should have had something allocated there because the decisions were made during that year, but I'm okay.
Well, the number that you see in 2019 is what was approved by council. Council did not, and that was back in April of 2019. However, the reorganization of structure for the departments and creation of the asset management department and to look at staffing complements was not done until August of 2019. So you will see a discrepancy in the numbers in 2019 versus 2020. Some of the staffing costs for the existing staff were already allocated previously in 2019 in the physical services department budget. That's since been removed and put into asset management for 2020. But on top of that, you have 2 other staffing positions that are hitting the budget this year.
Other questions? Not. Go ahead, Ramona.
Okay. So when we continue on, we have our budget broken out against actuals for back to 2015. So we've got 5 years of comparisons there based on our budget. And
Question.
yes.
At the top of that page where you have that 14,034,739, where does that number come from?
So that tax supported budget number comes from right here. Can you see where my mouse is?
No, I don't got it, Pat. No.
Okay, so I'm just going to change the color of this cell for a second. I'm going to change it to a bright orange.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
And then the second number comes from this cell.
Yeah.
And this is where our lift comes from there.
I was just trying to pull that number from the bottom chart on page 20. That number's different, that's all.
Bottom chart on page 20.
You look at the top line, there's a 14,701, 155, and then the next is 14,037, 239. That just confused me, that's all.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. I'm sure I can find a reconciliation for you at some point. I just won't be doing it right now.
That's fine, thanks.
So what we've done here is we've separated our budget out into a couple of different presentations. So one is by object account, so the type of income or expense that we have. And then we've also shown by percentages our revenues, so how much taxation we get. So that's 67% of our income. We're budgeting for 11% out of reserve transfers. And then you can see these smaller amounts come from various other sources. So user fees and charges, revenue from other municipalities, grants, licenses and permits, fines and penalties, other types of revenue. And then this smallest amount here that's a grouping is just broken out. And you can see some of these are so small, they make like under 1% of our income. And then we've done the same thing for expenses. So in expenses, you can see that about a third of our expenses are salaries, wages, and benefits. You can see that about 24% relates to our capital requests, 20% relates to contracted services, 13% to materials and supplies, and you can follow along there.
Bill Fair, I had a question in regards to the chart on page 20.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a grip on if you go up to user fees and charges in 2019, the actual was a little over 2 million. The revenues from other municipalities was over 1 million, but in 2020 they dropped down. I just wonder what was the reason for that tremendous increase from prior years in 2019? What makes up that big difference?
Okay, so 2019 has turned out to be a bit of a cleanup year for us. And there's a number of items that had been sitting on our balance sheet for some time that we are cleaning up. There will be a report to council about drains balances that will need to be written off. And as part of that process, we have to bring those into income. There's also some large balances with contractor holdbacks that were still sitting on the balance sheet as payable, but they had in fact already been paid. And some of those items were dating back to 2012, 2014. So we did a major cleanup in 2019. Where you see large swings like that, that's where I would tend to take a look at previous years and say, okay, well, what was our actual for previous years, knowing that we had about 700,000 in contractor holdbacks that we cleared off the balance sheet in 2019 and about 1.2 million in drains charges that we cleared off the balance sheet in 2019. So in order to do that from an accounting perspective, you have to swing those numbers through your profit and loss statement and then pull them back into the appropriate spots.
So if I'm clear on that, the rents and financial expenses, that's another area that's out $1 million for 2019. So are you saying that the prior financials many of them had to be restated, or, you know, this is a pretty big variation. We're talking, you know, $3 million or more on each side of the, you know, expenses and revenues, more than that actually.
What you'll find is that they net out. So I had to bring some through revenue and then again through expenses for the write-off piece. So I've used those numbers in our 2019 actual because that's where they stand right now. We still have some ongoing discussions with the auditors as to what's required. Of course, as an accountant, you know that we don't like to restate our financial statements if we don't have to. Our comparatives may end up being different, but essentially in 2019, that's the year where we want to get everything cleaned up so that we can move forward on an even basis.
So we will have a full explanation of what these this tremendous back and forth adjustment is as on this cleanup and full documentation on why all this hit in 2019?
Yes.
Other questions? I'm glad you asked that, Bill. I was confused about those as well. If not, go ahead, Ramona.
Okay. So we've gone through the charts. I'm just going to page down a little quicker here. Now, when we go through our actuals as compared to the 2020 budget, you can see the dollar difference and the percent increase based on the different object accounts, object groupings that we have. And then below that, we have explained them. So you can see our income from assessment, taxation, payments in lieu, our net's about 664 there. We've got some reserve transfers that we've reduced the amount of funding. Prior years are these prior year amounts that that are explained here in aggregate, not in detail. But essentially, we pulled out from prior years developer contributions used to fund already built projects. We've got an estimated reduced user fees for our arenas, beach, and parks. We do think that that number is going to be lower. We think that our building and planning is going to be lower. Now we also have, here's your 1.2 million for municipal drains not cleared, and that had to be flowed through the user fees. We have a one-time share where we were managing a construction project and London paid a share of that capital, so that was a one-time thing. We're predicting that our building permit revenue may be down by a couple $100,000, but that makes it in line with previous years, previous to 2019. 2019 was exceptionally high when you look at the trending. Reduced property tax penalty and interest by waiving penalty and interest, that is costing us about $30,000 a month. So that's council's going to have to consider whether they want to extend that come June 15th. And so we've estimated a reduced revenue there. Our provincial
Question, Bill Fair. Those, the reduction in the penalties and fees, that's only the current taxes that are being waived. The rest that were in arrears prior to this are still being charged as they were?
The decision was to waive all penalty and interest, including those on amounts prior. That's what the decision was. It is a little bit difficult for us operationally to split those out and only charge penalty and interest on the older amounts.
Actually, oh, sorry.
Dennis Kravitz. I had a question on the fines and penalties as well. That $30,000 a month that is currently costing the municipality, does that include the county and school board share, or is that $30,000 just our portion of it?
That is our portion of it. The county and school boards don't benefit from that penalty and interest that we charge. They get their original tax dollars.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that piece?
It's Colleen. I think that's a great question. Actually, why would there not be sharing by the other components?
So how it works when school boards and the county, when we collect their tax portion on their behalf, is we pay them the full amount that's due to the county and the school boards. And we actually absorb the carrying costs of any reduced property tax penalty and interest, or property taxes that aren't paid for that time. So we are the beneficiaries of the total amount of the property tax penalty and interest because the school boards and the county have already been paid. For this year with COVID-19, the county has come up with a plan that we are permitted to only pay their share based on our actual collections, our percentage collections for that quarter. And then at the end of 90 days, the full amount is due.
Is Dennis, and with that, I believe the school board, they're still paying all their full wages to all employees through this COVID time. And is the school board doing anything, or does anybody have any inkling if the school board is adjusting their budget or what they'll be charging the municipality? I don't know if anybody has an answer for that or not.
So that's done provincially and province-wide. They have given us they've given us an extra 90 days to pay those amounts. I'm not sure if they're going to extend that again. I believe it's 90 days, Dawn. I don't know if you want to pipe in there if I'm missing anything. Okay. So
just one comment, Ramona. The teachers, yes, they're being paid, but they are also working about 10 to 12 hours a day trying to teach the students electronically, virtually, etc., because it's much more difficult for them and time consuming than it was to just be physically present with the class. So it isn't that the teachers aren't working during this time. They are definitely still working and trying to help students and setting assignments and all the different things that they would normally do. It's a whole new reality to them. And I know many of them that are finding it very difficult.
Bill, fair question.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, in regards to salary, wages, and benefits, I notice it's going up. Do we have, in spite of the fact that arenas are closed, the beaches are closed, public areas are closed, they've been closed for months and probably will be closed much more, are we still running a full complement of staff even when we are not operating those areas?
Dawn, you're probably the best person to speak to that.
I was just saying that we have 9 people that were laid off. They've just come back last week. We had others that were doing part-time, but the 9 that we had laid off completely, we were not paying any salary for whatsoever. We have just brought everyone back full-time as of last Monday.
So then that asks the question of how can we have way more when we've had people off, like projecting for 2020, it's projecting a full complement of staff.
Yes, it is projecting a full complement of staff. I'm not sure that those people who were laid off for very long, and it's also projected that we'll need additional assistance to tackle the COVID-19 requirements.
The one thing we did, Don's going to speak.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to indicate that with those recreation employees that were laid off, the savings was just over $9,000 per week, each week that they were laid off.
I would note is we did bring in 2 building inspector, like bylaw enforcement officers, more than we normally would. We increased that because of all the enforcement that was required due to the COVID-19. Tom, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council has had updates from staff, and we've actually made some decisions ourselves at a meeting, but we've been certainly aware of all these staffing changes or not changes. So we've been paying attention that we've had all the information provided to us.
It's Colleen. I just wanted to clarify. Bill's question really was, I think, more the year-over-year change from 2019 to 2020 on that salaries line. And if the difference is that $500,000 thereabouts, I would just keep in mind that the 3 of the explanations are on the bottom of page 23. So one of them is the solid full waste. In 2019, we didn't have the 4 people. Now we have 5 for the full year. So you're going to get a different overlap there. And then you always have people that are on maternity leave or off for other reasons, which is the filled vacancies piece. So those 3 explanations, or those 2 with the COLA increase, accounts for 3/4 of that change. So I asked a similar question offline, I guess, and bottom line, there was, I think, 1 new full-time person in that. It's just really the overlaps and the timings of the different people being paid, if that's correct, Ramona.
Yeah, I believe it's closer to 1.5, 1.4. We did add some capacity at customer service as well. Does that take care of the questions?
Yes.
Any more questions in this area?
It's Colleen. I just had one other question on the policing line. I know it's not quite called out here, but do they truly just send an invoice and so that the increase is 100% labor, or do they actually include other information in their invoice?
They include 20 to 40 pages of additional information in their invoice, and they charge out based on a per household basis.
Thank you.
Central Elgin also pays at least a third of the policing budget for the county of Elgin, and it's all based on the number of calls, because there are far more calls in Central Elgin than anywhere else. That's one of the reasons ours is so high.
Okay. So continuing on then, if there's no further questions. What we saw then, I'm going to flip over to this sheet, was the impact and the revised impact now on the average property, which you can see for a single family home is approximately just under $44 a year. So flip back then and continue on if there's no questions on that, because we've covered that already, unless there are. So the next few pages we look at service areas, and we look at them in this particular case. What this was trying to do, and I'm not sure that it does the job as nicely as I would like, is it was trying to point out how much of our services are funded by property tax, how much of our services are funded by reserves and grants and user fees and other items, and how much of our services are funded by transfer from reserves. So as part of our change in budget format and our learning opportunities, we're going to take a look at this section and see if we can find a better way of displaying that. Now, in your Excel file, when you go to your main data tab, what you'll find is how we attempted to do that was over here in this expense funding line. So it's not going to match 100% because you'll see a number of things here like surface treatment. Well, it's about 55% funded by gas tax. It's not 100% funded by gas tax. And last year we had a top up for certain types of funds. We may not get those top ups year over year. So that's where that next section that you see, that's what it was attempting to do. I'm still not happy with it. So if you have some good ideas for how to present that in a little bit better way, you can let me know. So I will move along to our service area breakdown of revenues and expenses. So we've shown our operating revenue year over year by service area. I don't know if there's any questions on that. And then we show that breakdown again by the type of revenue that it is. And then we're going to do the same thing all over again for our capital revenue by service area. And then the type of revenue that it is. So you can see our capital is funded mostly by grants and reserve transfers. And then you can see our operating expenses by service area. And just stop me if you have any questions along the way. And you can see again our expenses by type. So whether it's contracted services, equipment charges, materials and supplies, or reserve transfers. And then we do the same thing with capital.
Okay, Bill Fair.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, I know this is a tough question. Do you think that it's in regards to the arenas on the operating expenses? I'm wondering, do you think we are going to be saving some on the arenas because they've been closed and who knows when they'll open, or do you think that's going to be fairly insignificant?
Jeff, are you able to answer that question?
Well, I can try. I would suggest that we would save some money on operating costs, possibly. Now, the ice was taken out of the arenas about 3 weeks early, so there might be some minor savings there. However, one thing to note is we lose all that revenue. So whether or not I have my doubts to whether we're saving any real amount of money.
Okay, yeah, because I saw the revenue hit that we're taking, and then I saw the expenses. The expenses seem to be fairly consistent with prior years, and I just wondered if there was something more to squeeze over there. And same thing as far as beach maintenance. I guess we'll, it seems we're not getting revenues because we're not getting travel, but I'm just wondering, I thought maybe there might be something more there, but it's possibly not much.
And it's very hard to predict. We processed a lot of refunds over the month of April and March, I believe, as well.
It's Dennis. Noting what Bill said on page 29, if you go down 2 more pages to the actual arena page, I see the user fee and charges on that is $425,000. Is that going to be, with COVID-19, is that going to be a realistic number, or are we putting that a little on the high side? I don't feel comfortable with that number.
And that's always the guess of a budget, right? So overall, what did we net in 2019? It was just under 800,000. We're predicting our net amount to be 200,000 more in costs over the course of 2020, but we're still really guessing.
Another question on that. This is a general question. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering. I know we're a long ways into the year. A lot of stuff has been put on hold. We're a long ways into the year, and I know sometimes when in companies that I do work for, if we're so far into the year, you've got some actuals. I'm wondering, in this projection, is there any real current activity that's been built in already, or has it just been projected based on 2019 and not say, well, this happened up until March or so on? So some of the numbers we would know, but I'm just wondering, were they used in this at all, or is there no actual current activity that we were able to use to help with these projections?
At this point, Bill, we're still playing catch up over 2019. We don't have necessarily the bench strength in our department to stay on top of things the way we would like. And so for those reasons, we have not included 2020 numbers. I've just seen here our 200,000 difference is really made up of capital requests. So we're looking at this as being a more even type of item for the arenas. But to go back to your question, Bill, no, we have not included anything for 2020 at this stage. That would require a few more days of work, and we're at the point where we don't have maybe a couple of weeks of work to get bank reconciliations up to speed and things like that. We don't have a couple of weeks. Our rate funded budget for tax purposes needs to be passed and finalized before any of the other municipalities within the County of Elgin can go ahead and print their final tax bills. So at this point, I believe we're probably the last on the list to get our budget passed.
Oh, thank you. I thought we might have had the luxury of having some current information, but I understand. Thank you.
Tom, if I could,
Ed?
we were projecting to purchase a nice resurfacer for Belmont. In fact, we may not even need it for a while. How much lead time, is that something they stock? You can just order and they'll deliver it within a week, or is there a long line up to get them, or just curious?
Yeah, I can speak to that one. It's, I believe, between 12 and 14 months lead time before we get one. So even if we do move forward with this purchase, it's likely not even to hit the ice for next ice season.
Better get it ordered then. Thank you.
So we're pretty much at the end of what I need to go through page by page. I think council's had the opportunity to see each of these particular service areas, the reason why we offer the service and where it lands in terms of what it does throughout the rest of the document. And again, the only thing that's going to change is the equipment charges, where we found that doubling up. So are there any questions on any of the service areas?
Yes, Bill Fair.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm just wondering, I know a week or so, a little while back, we talked about the training, the fire training. Now, I see that's in the budget here, and I know the way we voted, we're going to have to pay the county for training whether we use it or not. Was that additional roughly $40,000, I believe, included in this budget projection, so that we've got that, what we have to pay the county for not getting any real service, plus what we normally have? Was that built into the budget?
My understanding is that would be billed to us by the county based on the county share that we collect for them. I may be wrong in that presumption. Can someone maybe pipe in if that is the case?
What's happening? Got an echo here. Sorry. What's happening with the, we pay half the salary for the fire trainer, half of it is for emergency management. We would be paying that no matter what. We would be paying our share of the emergency management, and he's certainly been very busy during this COVID-19. We pay half, then we pay our share of our county taxes will go toward his salary. There's not a huge amount of that. The half of his salary is for fire training, and we would pay about a third of that half. We do not pay for any of the actual training that is billed to each municipal partner. So if, say, Malahide want certain training done, and they bring in their people, then they are billed for that specific training. The only thing we are paying is for the Jeff Smith's salary. And as I say, half of his salary is for emergency management. Only half is for fire training. And we will be paying 1/3 of 1/2.
So Mayor Martin, if I understand you correctly, we are paying that via the county levy and not as a separate charge.
That is correct. It will just be part of the county levy.
Okay. Are there any questions on any of the other service areas?
Could we, this is Dennis here, could we possibly go to page 33 at the bottom? With the policing, I would thank you right there. The policing, there's about a 10% increase in the contracted services for that this year. It's quite a large jump from the policing. And the fines and penalties, why is it down to 16,000? Why is there no revenue from the policing? It's a lot. It really dropped. It was 140,000, 130, then went to 35 last year, now down to 16. I'm just wondering why that revenue has dropped so drastically. Is there any answer with that?
The revenue we're receiving from Provincial Offences Act charges has been going down over the last little while. You can see it's been going down since 17, 18, 19. And there is a new county building for the POA folks. And I believe those charges get deducted before that revenue gets shared out to the rest of us. So that's predicted by the county to go down substantially, and COVID-19 isn't helping. I don't know, Don, if you wanted to pop in there, whether I have that explanation correct.
Yes, you do that. The charges of running the provincial offenses court come off of the revenue first. The county built the new court and staff that. So they did caution the lower tier municipalities a couple of years ago when decisions were being made to build the court that the actual increased costs of running the court would be reflected in reduced revenue for the lower tier municipalities from fines because of the staffing and cost of the building.
Also say that COVID would affect that too, because of course the courts have not been functioning.
Madam Mayor, it's Tom. In fairness to the county, they really had no choice. They pretty much had to build the building or would have lost the service.
Question for Ramona on the further pages. I just had one on the beach rescue, and I know we're going up again with salaries, wages, and benefits, but I'm not certain. I know Chris mentioned something about training occurring, but we don't know yet when and if I assume this is just an estimate because we don't know when and if our beach is going to be open, or how much services will be required, or what we're going to be doing. It could be more, it could be less. I'm assuming this is basically for the lifeguards.
Chris, did you want to speak to that?
Sure, I was just waiting. I wasn't sure, from Madam Mayor. So the wages it's going to be a slight increase, but it's to level off everybody to an equal pay rate. And then the supervisors have more responsibility. That would be something there for them, as sort of as an honorarium or a bonus. As far as the training goes, I'm not sure. It sounds like the province is probably going to do something maybe by July. I'm just guessing at that. That's not anything confirmed, but I can't risk having the guards not prepared if something does go live July 1st, that I have to make sure that they're equipped properly with the medical equipment that we need and the training. So we are doing that training in the month of June. So I just don't want to take the risk of sort of announcement coming on a Monday saying this is what's going to happen. So that's sort of where I'm at with that.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on any of the other service areas? Hearing none, do we then just move to whether we want to discuss any changes to the budget, or do I update based on what we've got here, and would council be prepared to pass this budget?
I'm sorry, I do have one question on the very last one. That was solid waste. I know we went up we hired now 5 instead of 4, but I wondered why it jumped from, I know we didn't start till partway through the year, so I'm assuming the 211,852 for 2019 and salaries, went up quite substantially, and I'm assuming that like $147,000, that is because it's going to be full-time and they're going to be 5 rather than 4, but I just wanted that clarified.
Jeff, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so that increase in salaries is due to obviously the 5 full-time unionized employees, as well as directing some non-union salaries into that as well. That would include some of my time, as well as the road superintendent, roads assistant superintendent, and then including in administrative staff as well.
I'm assuming we're going to get a full report at some point. I know when we did this, we said we would get a full report on costs, whether it's costing us less doing it in-house, whether it's costing us more. I know we have certainly, I think people have been happy with the service, much happier with the service, but it probably, when were you anticipating that we would get an actual report on the cost before we commit to staying with this?
Yeah, I was hoping to have a report by now for council to review. But looking at our priorities coming up here, we have to look at water rates, and then that being the first priority. Second priority would be to get a report to council to review the solid waste over the last year.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Madam Mayor, further to that point too, there are some decision points that council will need to consider around discussions around green bin and whether we're going to implement that, and also some discussions around the type of containers and if we want to move to containers for the waste collection. So that ties into costing analysis. Actually, senior staff had a brief discussion about that this morning when we were talking about the budget. So that is something that will be coming forward in the next, as Mr. Brooks indicated, in the next 2 or 3 months.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Tom.
Just a comment, if I'm going from memory here, but when we made the decision to take it in-house, if we hadn't, we would have had to go to tender, and all indications, I'm going from memory here, but we were looking at probably there wouldn't be a lot of competition, and we may have seen a sizable increase. So when we look at these numbers, maybe we should bear that in mind as well. If we'd gone to tender, we may be looking at fairly sharp increase.
That is my understanding. I don't know if Lloyd or Jeff, you wanted to speak to that.
Sure, I can speak to that. I can. What I can say is a neighboring municipality recently went out for proposals for solid waste collection, and based on those numbers that I've seen through council reports online, it would appear that we are slightly cheaper per household cost than what that municipality is paying for their new contract.
With that, Jeff, are they having green bins or using bins, or are they just having the traditional garbage collection like we have at the moment?
That particular municipality does not use green bins. So that price that I was discussing with before, that was for weekly recycling collection, weekly garbage collection only during the spring, summer, and fall months. And in the winter time, it was only bi-weekly garbage collection. So I think from what I've seen here, we're doing okay.
Any other questions before we get to Ramona's next question? Ramona?
Okay, so I guess my next question is there anything else that requires discussion regarding this budget, or can we move forward to preparing a bylaw?
Appreciate each member of council weighing in at this time so that we know how you feel about it before we actually make a motion and call a vote. Colleen, would you like to go? Okay, Tom, you go first.
I don't mind. I've had a lot of questions answered today. We could probably nitpick. You know, if we want to really sharpen the pencil, probably one more crosswalk in Port Stanley than I expected. But we're getting a pretty good deal through the county, so I can probably live with that. As a whole, you know, my first impression was that I probably would like to sleep on it. But right now, I'm feeling quite comfortable with it.
Thank you. So if we just go around the horseshoe, Colleen, do you have comments?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. When basically the original budget was the plus 2%. So my initial reaction was to go to the new capital data that was on the main data tab and see what that consisted of, and to see where there was any place that could be reduced. However, with the change in that equipment charge, we're now at a minus 1.4. So I have a better confidence level there, I guess. And when I did do the review on the capital requests, quite honestly, there weren't that many that I could come up with other than really just sharpening our pencils in all departments to say, yes, this is the budget, but is there a way to do it really efficiently to not exceed it at all? So I do like the approach with the service area. I think the Word document is helpful. There are some things that, and Ramona alluded to that earlier, that could be a little bit clearer or even more robust, perhaps, maybe more near the end of the document. But long story short, I would feel comfortable with this budget for this year. There's already $800,000 that's built in for COVID risk. Who knows, it could be a little bit more, but I think that's for a municipality our size. I think we're at least taking that initiative to pay attention to any risk that we might have.
Colleen, Dennis, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I do feel quite comfortable with this budget. There's a few things that raise flags for me. Maybe in the future we need to review our policing costs. Ask for we need to sit down and figure out our policing costs to get them down. There is one thing where the Southdale Line Bridge replacement, it's a $980,000 project, almost $1 million to do that project. And I see it slated for this year. That's the 100,000 for the the realignment's 100,000 on the bridge, and then 880 for the bridge itself. So this comes up to almost $1 million for that one project. And I don't know, do we have the capacity to do that this year? Is it physically possible to do that entire rehabilitation? And is that something that could be delayed if we need to? Is it something that we could put on the back burner, plan on doing it this year, but if the finances are required, we can delay this project? That would be my only question. I don't know if Jeff could answer that.
Yeah, sure. Like I mentioned earlier, we had a structural evaluation done by RJ Burnside on that bridge earlier in 2020 to provide us with some recommendations. And one of the, like I said, one of the recommendations was if the bridge can't be completed in 2020, we're going to have to further reduce the load restrictions on that bridge. So for that reason, that's why I'm recommending that we try and get that one done so that we don't have to reduce the level of service on on that bridge. Now, the realignment there, that will be treated as a separate contract. We're actually going to look at doing that one in-house with our operations department. So that they both are in, they really need to get done sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Jeff. That was something that I was concerned about a bit too, just because it is a very, not very populated road. Once you go over the bridge, we only have a few spots over the bridge, but in central Elgin. But I agree with Dennis in the sense that I certainly see stabilizing the embankment there, et cetera, and doing that. But his line is, if we were really short funds, we could put the the weight restrictions on that bridge and leave it till next year. But then we have so many other, commitments for next year that it could be a problem. So it's just, Dennis is just wanting to know, I think, whether it's possible if we run into financial difficulty due to COVID, can that be put off if necessary?
Madam Mayor? Would that not, then would ambulance and fire trucks would be prohibited from crossing that. That alarms me.
Madam Mayor, I would just say in response to your question that right up until the time that a tender is awarded, that council could decide to put it off if COVID costs increase beyond what we currently expect. So the tender tender award is basically the point where
This is Dennis again. I'd just like to say I would actually support this budget as it's presented, and perhaps we could keep that in mind. That may be something that we need to do as the COVID-19 continues on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kravitz. Karen Cook, would you like to make your comments?
Hi, yes, I think that the budget's definitely better than it was. I would like to see the totals for the waste management, but I definitely think we're going in the right direction with where the budget has been presented today. And I was going to comment as well as Dennis did, so with the bridge project as well. So I think that's been answered. So other than the waste management numbers, I think that we're headed the right way.
Tom's already spoken, so Bill, would you like to go?
Sure. As far as the layout of the budget, I do have to commend you, Ramona, on the layout. I was pleasantly surprised how nice it was to follow it. I of course have my nose out of joint that Lyndhurst is not getting their sewer this year. I sort of understand, sort of was adjusted between the Southdale Bridge priority and the Lyndhurst, but I understand that the budget, I like it a lot more now that it dropped down to that 0.44% increase only. I don't have too much of a problem with this. I think it has been a bit of a blessing that we did not go ahead with our budget in January, because now we would have been adjusting it completely and scrapping and amending. And I seriously wonder with the COVID, the way it's going in this world of unknowns that we've got, I think we seriously might have to revisit the budget down the road if COVID raises its ugly head and becomes more of a problem with budget. And I feel good that possibly that Southdale Road, the bridge might be a way out. So in conclusion, I'd have to say I think I can support this budget the way it is. I would like certainly to have the wastewater and the water study done, and I would also like very clear documentation and information for the massive adjustments on the balance sheet for restatements. But other than that, I think I would say yes to this budget.
Bill, just Ramona, can you remind us when we're going to do the water and wastewater?
So So once this budget and the bylaw get passed, then my next focus is on the water and wastewater. You actually, within your Excel sheet, have most of that information already, but I have to go back and review the study. I have to go back and review prior expenses and rates and just be comfortable myself that I'll be able to answer questions on them. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get that completed within the next couple of weeks. But no guarantees. Once I get into things, sometimes I find more than what I bargained for.
I appreciate that because I know there are people out there that were very concerned that we were putting that off. So if they're listening today, hopefully they'll know that we're doing our best and going to get to that as soon as we can. And Councillor Roberts or Fiona, you haven't had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I definitely can support this budget. We certainly headed in a much different direction than I thought we were going to, so that's good to see. I don't know that there's much more that I can add from what everybody else has put in. I do want to say, Bill, I am sorry. With Lyndhurst, again, it always does seem that they're the ones who get pushed aside, but I completely understand staff's reasoning with that. And I just want to commend Ramona on the layout, the new layout for the budget. I love this layout. I think this is fantastic. And staff, great job considering what you're working under so far this year. So great job in putting this together.
Thank you, Fiona. And I also want to say that once we got the Central Elgin budget commentary, that made a huge difference for me because the other sheets were just, I was getting confused. I'm not a finance person, so this one really helped myself. So I'm assuming from the sounds of it, we could pass the motion today to accept this budget and bring forth a bylaw to pass the budget. And I would need then a mover for that.
It's Tom. I'd be happy to move it.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Fiona. Thank you, Fiona.
Madam Mayor, could I make one more comment?
Certainly.
You know, if we look ahead, and this has been probably an abbreviated year with COVID, but it certainly urged staff, you know, if we look back to 2008, we had some pretty tough times, a lot of factory, and the governments both come out with some very, at the time, seemed generous incentive packages to get people back to work. If that happens again, who knows next year, and that's not that far off, some of our projects, we could get some pretty good finance help. So, you know, looking ahead, it may turn out to favor us.
I just am concerned somewhat with the amount of money they've been giving away already, how much they're going to have to give away in future, but they may want to do it to start up the economy again. So we'll have to see. I'm giving Diane a chance to, have you got the motion ready, Diane? No, I'm just.
Procedurally, Madam Mayor, we would pass that when we come out of committee of the whole.
Have to pass when we come out of committee of the whole. So we'll have the motion then to move out of committee of the whole.
The motion reads, Madam Mayor, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Deputy Mayor Marks, that Council adjourn from committee of the whole at 3:47 p.m. The vote reads, Madam Mayor, Councillor Cook?
Yes.
Councillor Krebitz?
Yes.
Councillor Fair?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Marks?
Yes.
Councillor Roberts?
Yes.
Councillor Rowe?
Yes.
And Mayor Martin?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Would you read the motion then concerning the budget?
Just for clarification purposes, if Ramona given any indication of which meeting we would be taking this to after we give notice?
I think I need some guidance on the notice because I understand there's quite a lengthy notice period, and I'm not sure if we can bring a bylaw for Monday's council or not. Don, can you please weigh in on that?
Madam Mayor, we're the board for the next meeting on Monday. We're required to give notice. So the earliest that it could come forward would be the first meeting in June, which I believe is June the 8th. That would be the first time. And it's a notice that council intends to pass the budget. That's the form of the notice. That would be June the 8th.
Okay, thank you. Diane, is that okay now? All right, Diane's going to read the motion.
The motion reads, Madam Mayor, moved by Deputy Mayor Marks, seconded by Councillor Roberts, that Council approve in principle the 2020 capital operational budget as presented on May the 19th, 2020, and further that Council direct staff to give notice of Council's intention to pass the capital operational budget of 2020 on Monday, June the 8th, 2020.
Call the
Councillor Cook,
Yes.
Councillor Kravitz,
Yes.
Councillor Fair,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Roberts,
Yes.
Councillor Rowe,
Yes.
and Mayor Martin.
yes.
The motion passes.
Martin.
Go ahead.
One thought on the Crescent Avenue project, the third phase that staff have talked about, as Mr. Brooks indicated in his report. It is ready to go to tender. If all things stay as projected right now, and a lot has changed over the last 2 or 3 months, and we're not really sure where we're going to be by year end, but if things stay as we're currently thinking they may be or projecting, it could be possible that we could go out for tender at the end of the year or in January, so that the contractor could start work soon as over March or April.
Would be my desire. I'm assuming Mr. Fair, you would be as well. And any others want to weigh in on that?
Bill Fair?
Yes.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I would be very happy with that. It led to one other question. I'm just wondering, I know we had discussions on shovel-ready projects in anticipation of grants. Would Jeff or Lloyd be able to say if there are shovel-ready projects that we would be sitting on that might benefit from grants that pop up?
I can speak for that one. Like Donna just mentioned, Crescent Ave or Lyndhurst Phase 3 will be shovel ready. So that's certainly one, if grants come up, that would be eligible. We're also working on getting the Front Street project. The environmental assessment project includes getting the project completed right up to the tendering phase of the project. So we're anticipating that one will also be shovel ready by November, in the event that there are grant monies that come forward. So we'll have those two projects there that are ready to go.
Madam Mayor, it's Colleen. Just to that point, I think it would be correct to assume that the 5-year capital plan, that's where the items that might become shovel ready between now and early next year would come from. Is that correct? Or would there be, I mean, there's always possibility that new projects come up, but the majority of them would be on that 5-year capital plan, correct?
That's where the projects would be coming from. However, we only have engineering for the two projects that I just discussed. We won't have the engineering completed for some of the other projects that you see in 2021, 2022. The engineering won't be completed on those projects until budget has been passed for those particular budget years.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Just wondering, would the Eastwood Park be one as well then?
Yes, my apologies. We will have Eastwood Park is shovel ready as well.
Okay, that's great. Any other questions? If not, I'll ask for the next motion.
The motion reads, Madam Mayor, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Deputy Mayor Marks, that the special meeting of council dated Tuesday, May the 19th, 2020 be adjourned at 3:54 p.m. and the next regular planning meeting of council be scheduled for Monday, May 25th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. Cook,
Yes.
Councillor Kravitz, Councillor Fair,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Roberts,
Yes.
Councillor Rowe,
Yes.
and Mayor Martin.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. That was a lot pleasanter than I anticipated. It went very well. And thank you, Ramona, for the commentary. That really did help a lot. And I appreciated the printed copy. I'm sorry, I hate to have paper wasted, but it gave me a place to write all my questions and concerns down so that I could see them easily. Thank you.
Bill Fair.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.